General Hospital will reveal exciting events in the next 2 weeks from April 21st to May 2nd, 2025. First, between April 21st and 25th, a subtle but meticulously orchestrated undercurrent began to ripple through the corridors of Alexis's law firm. In a place where power often wore the mask of civility, where intentions were cloaked in polished words and signed documents, Jens Sidwell was moving his pieces carefully. Though outwardly just another businessman with influence, Sidwell was far more than he appeared, a master manipulator who preferred to act through others while his own hands remained clean. It was in this calculated spirit that he chose to speak highly of Marco, a seemingly unremarkable associate whose recent arrival had barely caused a stir. Yet Sidwell's praise for him was too specific, too consistent to be casual. He described Marco as resourceful, loyal, adaptable, all qualities that would sound harmless on paper but in the right context, meant Marco was pliable, controllable, useful. Alexis, who had spent years navigating treacherous legal waters, wasn't easily swayed by charm or empty endorsements. Though she listened politely, she inwardly questioned the motives. Why Marco? Why now? Sidwell had no habit of sponsoring anyone without purpose. And Alexis, who had learned the hard way to trust patterns more than promises, made a mental note. She didn't confront him. She didn't challenge the flattery. Instead, she observed. She remembered. Every move, every word, every subtle shift in posture, all were added to a growing mental dossier she had quietly begun building against him. But far from the law offices and their silent warfare, another drama was unfolding in private, one far more personal, far more emotionally charged. Sasha, still carrying the scars of her past mistakes and trying to rebuild her life in fragile steps, had made a decision that would come to haunt her. The $250,000 contract she had entered into with Sidwell seemed, at the time, like a lifeline, a chance to regain control of her narrative, to stand on her own 2 feet again. Yet with every passing day, the weight of that contract grew heavier. It wasn't just a transaction. It was a tether. And when Jason, someone who had always seen through facades and false intentions, discovered the truth, the air between them shifted irrevocably. Jason didn't need to raise his voice or hurl accusations. His silence alone said everything Sasha feared. He had always believed in her, even at her worst, he had extended his loyalty and protection. And now, with the knowledge of her deal with Sidwell, that faith cracked. Sasha felt it in the way he looked at her, the way his presence became colder, more distant. The deal, in Jason's eyes, was more than reckless, it was a betrayal of principle. Sasha had chosen survival, yes, but at the cost of something she could never reclaim, his trust. And for a woman who had so often stood on the edge of isolation, that loss felt like a plunge into emotional exile. Not far from this crumbling trust stood Jordan, a woman known for her resolve, her professionalism, and her tightly guarded heart. For weeks now, her connection with Isaiah had been on shaky ground, not from a lack of affection, but from the complications that Sidwell had entangled them both in. The rumors, the investigations, the threats, they had all contributed to a quiet erosion of their bond. Friends suggested space, colleagues advised caution. But Jordan wasn't ready to surrender. For once, her instincts, which had so often saved her in the field, urged her not to walk away, but to hold on. Even if that meant enduring distance, even if it meant facing long, silent nights of uncertainty, she believed the connection was worth preserving. Every glance Isaiah had once given her, every moment they had shared, still lingered in her memory like echoes she couldn't silence. Jordan refused to believe that a man like Sidwell, no matter how powerful or dangerous, had the right to dictate the terms of her heart. If love was truly the one uncontaminated force in a world built on lies and leverage, then she would fight for it, not with weapons, but with patience, loyalty, and resolve. Yet in the shadows of all these individual battles, a larger storm was forming. Sidwell's influence was spreading like a silent virus, infecting relationships, trust, and reputations. Marco, whether knowingly or not, had become a pawn in a bigger scheme. Sasha had been compromised. Jason, now more alert than ever, was watching every move. Alexis, suspicious and calculating, was preparing for the inevitable clash. And Jordan, caught between personal longing and professional duty, was walking a razor-thin line between heart and logic. In Port Charles, nothing ever stayed buried for long. Secrets always found a way to rise, especially when they were tied to power. And as Sidwell's web tightened, those caught inside it would soon be forced to choose, remain silent and safe, or speak out and risk everything. Because in a world where even love could be weaponized, the only true victory was surviving without losing your soul. Second, as the final days of April unfold, new allegiances are forged while old loyalties are strained to the breaking point, casting long shadows over Port Charles. At the center of this shifting landscape stands Drew, a man who has never shied away from risks when it comes to achieving what he believes is right, even if it means walking straight into uncharted territory. After careful deliberation and relentless persuasion, it now appears that his efforts will finally bear fruit. Kai, long hesitant to commit, will deliver a decisive response. The answer is yes. The advanced procedure Drew had been fighting for is finally set in motion. With Kai's cooperation secured, Drew is poised to launch into a future that promises not only medical breakthroughs but also political leverage, the kind that could change the very power structure Drew has been quietly maneuvering behind the scenes. But while Drew moves forward with strategic clarity, Carly finds herself walking on increasingly fragile ground. Her world, once defined by absolute certainty and inner strength, begins to fracture under the weight of unexpected betrayal. An ally, someone she once stood beside without question, is about to show their true colors. All signs point to Nina, a woman with whom Carly has shared a complicated, often volatile history. Though their uneasy truce had appeared to hold for a time, the illusion of peace is shattered when Carly realizes Nina may be working against her from within. Whether it's a leaked secret, a withheld truth, or a quiet alliance forged with the wrong side, the betrayal cuts deep. For Carly, who measures loyalty by actions, not words, this revelation is not just a breach of trust, it's war. But perhaps the most painful wound doesn't come from a known rival, it comes from someone Carly loves most. Jason. Her oldest ally. Her truest confidant. The man who had always stood at her side, even when the world turned against her. Now, he's doing what Carly cannot accept, helping Willow. What may seem to others as a simple gesture of support is, in Carly's eyes, an act of profound disloyalty. Not because Jason chose to aid someone, but because of who that someone is, and what that help might mean. Willow, trapped in her own web of grief and confusion, sends an unspoken cry for help to Jason. Something in her life, perhaps involving her children, her guilt, or her fear, drives her to reach out to the one man she believes will understand without judgment. And Jason, bound by the code he's always lived by, answers. He steps in. Not for politics, not for power, but because someone needed him. Yet his intervention sends ripples through Carly's world, threatening to upend the fragile foundation of their bond. The woman who has stood through fires and storms with him cannot reconcile that he would side with someone who, in her view, represents a newer, more dangerous kind of betrayal. Perhaps it's Willow's attempt at reconciliation that truly lights the fuse. Maybe, despite everything, Willow still wants peace, still hopes that bridges can be rebuilt between her and Carly. But Carly isn't ready to forgive, and she certainly isn't ready to forget. When she learns of Jason's involvement, her anger flares not just at Willow, but at Jason himself. The heartbreak she feels is compounded by the fact that this is not the betrayal of a stranger. It's the breach of a best friend, someone who once promised he would never choose sides. As the layers unfold, the emotional toll on Carly becomes undeniable. She lashes out, not with violence, but with fury sharpened by pain. In doing so, she risks severing one of the few bonds that had remained untouched by the chaos around her. Jason, meanwhile, stands at a crossroads, torn between his sense of duty and the woman who has been his anchor for years. And in the background, the machinery of power continues to turn. With Kai on Drew's side, and alliances quietly shifting, the battlefield is no longer just about politics or revenge. It's about hearts, memories, and the blurred lines between loyalty and betrayal. As April draws to a close, it's clear that not everyone will come out of this unscathed, and some relationships may never be the same again. Third, as the final days of April unfold in Port Charles, a new web of quiet tensions, emotional upheaval, and power plays begins to tighten, especially within the city's most influential families. Tracy, always known for her sharp instincts and manipulative prowess, is preparing to present a proposition to someone. Though the recipient remains unknown, anyone familiar with Tracy understands one thing: her offers are never simple or altruistic. Every word, every term, is laced with strategic purpose. And more often than not, accepting such an offer comes with a steep price, one that benefits the Quartermaine legacy above all else. At the same time, Lulu is stepping back into the spotlight, determined to rebuild her familial bond with Dante. Their upcoming conversation is more than just a reunion, it's a potentially transformative discussion about the future of Rocco, their son. Recently, Rocco has been increasingly caught between two powerful grandparents, Sonny and Laura. Their influence, however well-intentioned, has created a tug-of-war of expectations that's beginning to weigh heavily on the boy. Lulu and Dante realize that if they don't intervene soon, Rocco could be pulled into a conflict not of his own making, one that could shape his future in ways they never intended. Adding fuel to the fire is Brooke Lynn, who's about to face an emotional minefield. Tensions are about to erupt between her and Lulu when Brooke Lynn suspects that Lulu may have hinted, or is planning to tell, Dante the truth about the adopted child. The alarms start ringing loudly in Brooke Lynn's mind. She's convinced Lulu is trying to use Dante's emotions to edge her out, to reclaim space in a relationship Brooke Lynn has fought hard to protect. The idea that a closely held secret could be used against her feels like betrayal waiting to strike. As fear turns to frustration, Brooke Lynn braces for a collision with Lulu, one that could unravel everything. Meanwhile, Drew finds himself in a battle of a different kind. Willow, for reasons only she truly understands, has gone to Jason for help, thinking she was seeking comfort, clarity, or protection. But instead, she unwittingly provokes a reaction she never anticipated. Drew, usually calm and measured, is now visibly shaken. To him, Willow's decision feels like a breach of trust, a crack in the foundation they had built together. He sees it not just as a slight, but as an act of disloyalty, choosing someone else's judgment over his. The shock hits Willow hard. She had never imagined her choice would hurt Drew so deeply. Now, she's left to reevaluate everything, including the legal guardianship agreement she had signed with him. Was it the right decision? Was she too hasty? Or has her heart led her astray? And then there's Nina, never one to remain idle when an opportunity to strike presents itself. Unlike others who fear scandal, Nina wades through the mud with practiced ease. While Carly and Drew are consumed by emotional turmoil, Nina is quietly laying the groundwork for her next move. Whether it's to retaliate against Carly, tamper with Drew's guardianship paperwork, or expose a long-buried secret, Nina is more than willing to cross lines others wouldn't dare. She doesn't hesitate, because she knows in the game of Port Charles, boldness often wins where caution fails. This is no longer a town of mere family feuds and minor betrayals. Port Charles has become a battleground, not just for power, but for identity, control, and the very essence of what it means to trust someone. With every character carrying a secret, every choice carving a new path, the fallout will be as personal as it is political. And when the dust settles, it's clear that not everyone will remain standing, and some relationships may be broken beyond repair. Fourth, elsewhere, a medical emergency brews when Cody suffers a sudden injury that demands immediate attention. The details surrounding the incident remain unclear, whether it was an accident, an altercation, or the result of reckless behavior, but one thing is certain, Cody is in need of care, and fast. The question now hangs heavily in the air: will Molly, with her growing confidence in her legal and medical knowledge, step in and personally handle Cody's treatment, or will she push for him to be admitted to General Hospital? Given her position and recent strain on her personal judgment, it's a dilemma that could test not only her ethical boundaries but her ability to separate emotion from responsibility. The situation may become even more complex if Molly attempts to protect Cody from legal consequences or tries to cover for someone else involved in his injury. Meanwhile, across the country in Los Angeles, Sonny stands at the edge of a deeply personal crossroads. As he prepares for a delicate surgical procedure, Carly remains close by, physically, emotionally, and perhaps spiritually. Despite their differences and the heavy burdens of their shared past, Carly has never truly turned her back on Sonny when it matters most. She waits with quiet anxiety, aware that this operation is no routine intervention. The risks are high, and the emotional stakes even higher. Eventually, the long wait ends, and Carly receives an update on Sonny's condition. But whether it brings relief or despair is yet to be revealed. There's a growing concern that Sonny's surgery may not go according to plan. Though the medical team is capable and experienced, the human factor, and possible interference, casts a dark shadow over the procedure. Sidwell, having already been tipped off by Natalia, is now in possession of critical information. It doesn't take long for someone like him to twist that knowledge into leverage, or sabotage. If Sidwell has truly chosen to act against Sonny, the consequences could be devastating. Even a minor disruption at a key moment could tilt the balance between success and catastrophe. As Carly waits outside the operating room, unaware of the machinations potentially threatening the outcome, her mind is likely flooded with memories, regrets, and unresolved emotions. She may not know it yet, but the danger Sonny faces might not just be medical, it could be political, calculated, and deeply personal. Back in Port Charles, Christina finds herself caught in an emotional whirlwind of her own. A sudden revelation sends shockwaves through her, shaking the fragile structure of control she's fought to maintain. Though the specifics of the shock remain under wraps, it's clearly enough to leave Christina reeling. At the center of it all stands Alexis, now placed in a nearly impossible position. The weight of the truth, that Ava has been blackmailing her, that the situation has spiraled far beyond what she ever imagined, may finally be too heavy to carry in silence. Alexis must now confront the truth. Ava's blackmail wasn't just opportunistic. It was born from something reckless Christina did, something that exposed them all. The temptation to confess, to cleanse herself of the growing guilt, grows stronger by the day. But doing so would mean exposing Christina's role in the fallout, potentially ruining her daughter's reputation and undoing months, even years, of personal growth. For Alexis, it's not just about protecting herself, it's about making an impossible choice between truth and family. With every passing moment, the consequences of silence and the dangers of confession weigh heavier. And as events spiral out of control from Port Charles to Los Angeles, one thing becomes chillingly clear: this is no longer just about secrets. It's about survival, of reputation, of love, of legacy. And not everyone will make it through unscathed. Finally, during the week of April 28 to May 2, Port Charles once again becomes the epicenter of emotional turbulence and unexpected developments. Trina, after wrestling with her inner conflicts between reason and emotion, finally lets her heart take the lead. She opens herself up to Kai, a man still walking a precarious path of medical treatment and uncertainty. Their bond, once rooted in emotional connection, now deepens into physical intimacy. In a moment of vulnerability and passion, Trina and Kai find comfort in each other's arms, not just enjoying the present but daring to imagine a shared future. Though the fear surrounding Kai's ongoing treatment still lingers in Trina's heart, she refuses to let it erode the closeness they've built. In fact, the looming threat seems only to strengthen her resolve to hold on to what they have. Elsewhere, Lulu finally gathers the courage to speak the truth she's held inside for far too long. She confesses to Dante that she's still in love with him, a love that has endured separation, silence, and pain. Her admission doesn't come as a fantasy or a plea, but as a quiet declaration of something deep and unwavering. For Dante, the words may not be entirely surprising. Maxie had already hinted that Lulu wanted to express her feelings before she fell into her coma, but the emotional weight of hearing it directly from Lulu hits differently. She's no longer a memory from the past, she's here, she's real, and the love they once shared might still be very much alive. Dante now finds himself at a crossroads, forced to confront emotions he had long buried under responsibility and time. As Dante navigates the emotional waves stirred by Lulu's return, Lucas moves forward with his own complicated relationship. Despite lingering suspicions from Sidwell, Lucas is deepening his bond with Marco. No one is quite sure of Marco's true intentions. Whether he's a man genuinely seeking redemption or a hidden pawn in one of Sidwell's more sinister schemes. But to Lucas, Marco represents possibility. He sees something in him worth trusting, something worth investing in. Even as Sidwell quietly sows doubt and mistrust, Lucas holds firm. His connection to Marco is growing stronger, and he refuses to let fear dictate his choices. All of these threads are converging into a new storm brewing over Port Charles, a chapter defined by emotional reckonings and high-stakes decisions. Love, trust, and second chances are being tested against the backdrop of secrets, manipulations, and old wounds. Some are finding the strength to confront their true feelings, while others are maneuvering in the shadows, laying the groundwork for what's to come. As always in Port Charles, nothing is ever entirely safe, especially when love and deception exist side by side in every breath.